I remember one time an ex saying, I'm not saying this is wrong of him to say that. I think that it was just different expectations. I was in my 20s and he was like, am I ever going to be above radio?
Oh, God, women say that too.
And I looked this poor man in the face and I was like, probably not.
Yeah.
What? But I was in my 20s. I was very ambitious.
But that's the thing, is that you have to sacrifice in your 20s. You would not be here today if you said to that individual, yeah, you'll be above radio.
Right.
And I made it very clear with the wonderful woman who I date now. The first date, I said, here are my priorities. It's business, it's my health, it's my son, and then you. I need to make sure my business is thriving.
Right.
I need to make sure my health is thriving so I can be the best father to my son, and then you come right after. If you don't feel comfortable with that, that's okay.
Absolutely.
I can find you a finance bro in Charlotte. And thankfully, she comes from a family that is very well connected. I mean, very business oriented, so she understands.
Right.
But yeah, it's unbelievable.
Welcome to the Chris Salerno Show, your go-to for real estate, business, health, and family insight. I'm Chris Salerno, CEO of QC Capital. Each episode, we explore the latest trends and expert advice from industry leaders. Whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or seeking balance, this show provides an inspiration you need. Join us and elevate your game on the Chris Salerno Show.
Welcome to the Chris Salerno Show. I am your host, Chris Salerno. I have a friend. I've known him for probably about 3 years, and I'll tell you guys how we met. But I got Miguel Fuller on, a native Tampa individual, now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. Really huge all over the radio station. I will say, if you don't follow him, you better, because he does pour out some funny clips. And I always message him, and I'm like, did this really happen in Charlotte? It is some funny stuff that I just can't believe happens. But Miguel, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, I'm not just sweating because it's hot outside, but, I got a pro here. He's been doing it a long time, so I got to make sure I'm good. I'm excited to have you on. I've known you for 3 years. I'll say how we met, and then I want to give your background. I was dating a girl in Miguel's building that he was living in, and there's a damn fire alarm.
Especially in a high rise in Uptown.
Everyone's walking out, even if you're in a robe. And you were, I think you were on your phone, and you were a little ways away, and she was from Tampa, and she was like, "That's Miguel," and I was like, okay, like, cool. Hey, Miguel.
Hey.
Okay. And she goes, like, Miguel and Holly? I'm like, I don't know who that is. And she's like, they're famous across Tampa. Like, I've listened to them every morning. I was like, well, then go say hi. She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, we're all stuck outside. It's not like he's going to run back in the building.
I'm here. I got nowhere else to go.
So I said, I'm stuck. Go force him and say hello. And so that's how we met, and then stayed in touch. And then we both share a very strong passion for Charlotte Angels, which we'll touch on throughout this episode. But yeah, that's how we met. And we just, throughout social media, just chatted back and forth, funny memes and things like that. But yeah, it's been good. Yeah. It's wild. It's been 3 years.
I know. The time has just passed by so quickly. Like, when I think about living in that building in Uptown, and when I met you and Homegirl, it seems like a decade ago, but like also like yesterday. Yeah. And just time is going by. I feel like since the pandemic,
I know,
time has just sped up. By. And I was just joking with my co-host and our producer, because we're looking at like the next few weeks, and I'm like, it's pretty much Halloween. Yeah. Like, the summer is pretty much over. Like, it's just boom, boom, boom. Time just goes by so quickly.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how fast it flies by. I mean, we got 6 more months, and we're in 2026.
Oh my gosh!
And especially when you have a child too, it flies by.
I can only imagine. Like, I don't have any kids, so I appreciate them from like a ways away. Like, you have one.
Oh yeah.
My co-host has a daughter, and I'm like, we'll just be the uncle over here. That's it.
There you go. I love it. I love it. That's a good way. So let's tell everyone who's Miguel.
Yeah.
Where were you born? How? Walk us through that whole childhood.
Absolutely. So I was born in Atlanta in 1985. Seems like what is?
There you go.
Long time ago.
You're 10 years older than me.
Yeah. Everybody keeps reminding me that.
I don't mean to age you.
It's
you
fine.
Look good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I turned 40 this year.
Big 40.
Yeah. Big.
What date?
August 22nd.
Okay, big date. Here we go.
So there's lots of trepidation, excitement about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was born in Atlanta, grew up there until age 6. And then age 6, my mom met a guy, and she was like, let's go on an adventure. So we moved to Denver.
Wow.
And no one in my family has ever really moved away.
Especially
like that.
cold weather.
Yeah, yes, very much so. And we were not used to that. But I really always say that was such a defining time in my life because I learned about how to be resilient, how it means to be in a multicultural setting. Because before that, we lived in South Atlanta where I was around a bunch of black people like me.
It was mainly black people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so going to a place like Denver where you have just an array of people, I learned so much about.
What age was that?
Age 6.
Age 6,
when I moved there. Yeah. So I was there from age 6 till 11.
Was that wow. Denver's very diverse, too.
Yes, it is.
Very diverse.
I'm not sure what the makeup is now, but I just remember like in middle school, in elementary school, like my best friend was a Hispanic woman. I had an Asian girl that was like one of my besties. I mean, so it was just like an array of people. So that's why when we moved back to Atlanta in 97, my grandmother had a stroke. And so my mom was like, well, we got to go back home. We got to go take care of her. I was from the summer between 6th and 7th grade. And so we were back in South Atlanta. And I was like, well, I don't want to go to one of the schools where everyone looks like me. I still want to like have a multicultural, somewhat type of education. Yeah. So, and this is what I always describe as how sometimes, the difference between what's learned behavior and what you're born with. At the age of 11, between 6th and 7th grade, we moved back. And I did some research, and I found that there was a program where they started in the 70s in Atlanta and Fulton County where it would desegregate schools. So if you were living in a black population, they'd bus you up to the white schools and then vice versa. But then by the time we get to the early 2000s or 90s at this point, it's just black kids going up to the white schools. Yeah. And so I found it. I made an appointment with the school board at age 11. And I was like, hey, Mom, we're going to Fulton County School Board of Education at the end of July. And she was like, wait, for what? And I'm like, well, I want to go to the schools up there. And she was like, okay, who are you? Like, how are you this way? So I've always had that sort of drive.
That leadership.
Yeah, to like, well, I see what I want. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out.
I love that.
So I started 7th grade.
Did it come from Mom? Who did it come from? Where did it instill in you?
I think that, I don't know, actually. I think because I always describe there's two sides of my personality. My mom is, like, if she were born in a different time, she would have my job on the radio because she's boisterous, she's fun, she's comedic. But because she grew up in a different time, she never got to show those talents. But that's where that side of me comes from. But then the, like, private side that you just see at home, it's more of my quiet, reserved, but very servant based, helpful, patient, kind listening. That comes from my grandmother. But when it comes to that sort of tenacity to just sort of like, I see something, I want it.
I'm gonna get it.
I don't know where it came from. I don't. It's just always been there.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of another way that I learned how to overcome obstacles because I would be on the school bus from 5:30 in the morning.
I remember those damn buses.
Until 8:20. So I was on the school bus for like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Every day from 7th grade all the way till high school.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Well, 5:20. I mean, that's just one way.
So that's one way.
You got to come back.
Got to come back.
So wow, that's a lot.
But what's great is that's where I learned my love of radio because I was on the school bus, and back then we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have podcast and the world at your fingertips. Yeah. I had a Walkman that I would just be on the bus with and listen to the radio in Atlanta. And so that's where I learned about morning radio and where I was just obsessed with these personalities who would talk about their lives, would tell funny stories with listeners, and give away cool experiences.
I've never really met, and take this in no offense.
Nope.
And I know you don't because we chat all the time. I've never met someone that said, hey, I want to be in radio.
Yeah, no one says that.
I mean, no one says that. Hey, I'm going to be in radio. Like, I've never heard of that. Now I'm hearing, hey, I'm going to start a podcast these days, which, everyone wants to do that. But yeah, that's very interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be on the radio.
Yeah.
And like you said, no one has ever said that. So my family was like, Okay, that's a thing.
And back then, you didn't make much money.
No,
and
no.
you really don't today. The only way you do today is going outside of the box of, hey, follow me on social media. Let's create our own podcast.
Right.
That's what the social media when social media starts to pay you. That's when you make the big money. But yeah, you really don't. Just if you're going to be on air, old school, you don't make money.
It's very much an entrepreneurial experience being in the radio, because people think that you just go on and you talk and you just tell jokes or stories about your lives. But there is so much planning that goes into it. There's so much marketing, because a big part of my job also is I endorse products and services. So I have to meet with clients. I have to understand.
Because you guys need ad spend.
Absolutely.
We bought ad spend for what was it? It was a talk show. It was like when Sean Hannity's talk show until he passed, unfortunately. But it was iHeartRadio we did work with too. But yeah.
Oh, was it Rush Limbaugh?
Yeah, Rush Limbaugh. Yep. Because of our type of clientele, you know, they listen to that.
Right.
So they don't listen to regular music.
Right.
But yeah, you endorse certain type, and you want to make sure who you're endorsing is great quality individuals and people behind the product,
and that you believe in it, and that if you're putting your name behind something, you have to believe it.
I had a health company, because from following me, I'm big into health and things like that now. A health company reached out and said, "Hey, I'll pay you $100 per post." Now it's not like Kim Kardashian stuff, but I'll take the $100.
Right.
But I was like, "Yeah, I'm happy to do that." I'm like, "Please send me your ingredients," and they sent it, and I was like, hey, I don't agree with these. So they actually got the head nutritionist on, and still I went back and forth with the head nutritionist, and I said, hey, with all respect, I understand this is $100,
right?
But I just don't feel comfortable pushing this out because you guys don't have truly healthy product,
right?
That you're claiming it's for health, but it's not truly healthy,
right? Because that's your brand, and your brand is health. And if you're telling your followers, hey, trust this product because I trust it. And if you actually aren't using it and they find that out, well, you've destroyed your brand. And so at the end of the day, all we have is our word. And so if you're not living up to that word and you're telling people to go buy something and that you're using it and it's not it, then they can't trust you.
Yeah.
And so that's why that's such a big part of our job is also marketing. And then there's a whole nother thing now. When I started back in 2007, when I was in college doing professional radio, social media wasn't, we had Facebook and MySpace, but that was...
Oh, I remember MySpace.
Right?
I got
you had the top
my
8.
little music. I get to pick my little music every week.
Right? We had our HTML, and we were figuring out how to make our mouses like a little glitter bomb or something.
I remember AIM.
Yes. Yeah. All of that.
I know.
But none of that were for businesses. It was all personal. And then I remember when they let everybody on Facebook, and it wasn't just college students.
Yeah.
And I remember we were doing radio at the time in Panama City Beach, and we were like, okay, so this is a tool to connect. So we'll add listeners on our personal Facebook pages.
Yeah.
There was no strategy behind it or anything. So when I think about what we used to do then and how now it is a whole nother full-time job.
World.
If people ask me, if I had an unlimited budget, what would I add to my radio show? And I would say 2 full-time social media people, because it's a full-time job now.
It is.
And so that's the difference. So you have all of those things where we're creating a show.
And they're changing their algorithm so much, too.
You have
it's
to.
Unbelievable.
Every week I get different emails from different social media companies that are like, all right, here's a new thing with TikTok. Here's a new thing with Instagram. And I'm like, I thought we were just doing carousels. Now we're doing reels, but then you can't do a full reel. You have to do pictures on your reel and I'm like,
you got to do this music. You got to make sure it's edited proper. Oh, I know.
It's so much. It's so much, but it's a full-time job. So people look at radio and they're like, oh, that's so old school. But it is we have rebranded. We have transformed ourselves because radio's been around since the 20s or 30s, and so we have transformed ourselves so many times.
You're going to have to.
Absolutely. So this is just another metamorphosis that we're going through.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to adapt. I mean, why would someone go to Spotify to just listen to, an album that has all different type of music, if you like 80s, 90s, whatever it is, or decide to go to the radio?
Right.
And I think the big thing is what you and Holly do phenomenally is you build those loyal listeners. Is why do I follow you on Instagram? 1, because I know you, but 2, the shit you post is funny as hell. You and Holly are hilarious. And so when I want to get a kick, which
Right.
everyone wants to laugh here or there, I know I can go to Miguel's page and watch some crazy ass shit that's happened and see his reaction and Holly's reaction and be like, wow, that's funny.
Right. Absolutely.
And you build that trust and that bond amongst those listeners. And I think it's helpful with social media because now you're just not Charlotte or Tampa. You're the whole world.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. I mean, and we've had a few of our reels go super viral, and it's really funny when it starts to get up into the million range.
Yeah.
Because then you have people commenting from different political beliefs, different countries, different states. And so they start piling on. So we've had a bunch of people start listening to our full show podcast because they're like, oh, I really love the content that you post, and it's not a lot of times the full episode or the full segment, and they're like, I want to hear the end of this, so they'll go listen to our podcast, and then they're like, oh, I really like that, so I'm gonna listen to more and more and more. And so it's really cool building a community of people from all around the world, all because of a reel that you posted about a segment you did from Charlotte, North Carolina.
It's wild. It's wild. Before we talk about all the haters you got, let's talk about that first step into radio. Normally people start at the very bottom. And so walk us through when you said, hey, I'm going to go apply to a radio station and I'm going to try to get on.
Well, let me take you back a little bit because I've been doing radio for so long. It is like a part of my DNA.
Love it.
And I like to say also too, not just radio, but like content creation.
Yeah.
When I was in middle school, we had a middle school radio station when I got back to Atlanta and at Crabapple Middle School. And it was just a little radio that was a 1 mile radius around the school.
Really?
And we would go and read the lunch menu and do the announcements, and they would record it and it would just be on a loop. And that was my first taste of, oh my gosh, we did something in a little room and all these people can hear it. But at the time, I had a really bad stutter. And so everyone in the room. Oh, yeah. When you
overcame it.
Yes. Well, when you listen to the show, or even probably in this conversation, sometimes you'll hear it if I'm talking if I get really excited.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me sort of skip over my words, and you'll hear me go,
because you're just so excited.
Right. And I'm just like, and I have to stop, calm.
Yeah.
And so that's where I learned how to craft my presence on the air, was that middle school radio station. Then we had one in high school that I was a station manager of, and I got to learn about promotions and things like that. And then I was like, I want to go to college for this. So I went to Georgia Southern University, and I majored in broadcasting, and I applied for my first internship in Savannah with Clear Channel, which is now iHeartRadio, who I work for. And I started interning the summer between my junior and senior year of college. And that's when I was like, this is for me.
I love it.
I was making $7 an hour, driving the radio station vans around for events around Savannah.
You were hustling.
I was setting up tents, tables, balloons, getting the on-air personalities, whatever they needed.
$7 an hour.
$7 an hour.
These young millennials want 30.
I'm like, what are you talking about? Like $7.
I was a lifeguard for $7.25 at Carowinds in the hot summer.
Yes.
Felt like 10 hours a day.
Yes, 100%. But that's what you did.
Yeah.
And so I did that as the internship. Then they hired me onto promotions. And then because I was doing it my entire senior year, where I missed a lot of parties, I missed a lot of friend gatherings, or I would have to get there late because I was like, this is what I want to do.
I love that.
3 months before I graduated from high school or from college, my big boss pulled me aside and said, hey, we have someone that's moving on. We'd love to hire you full time. And I was like, oh my gosh, full time. I graduate that May from Georgia Southern, my broadcasting degree. This is perfect. And then he was like, your salary is $20,000 a year. Now, as a person who grew up poor, knew nothing about money, I just heard thousands of dollars, and I was like,
sign me up.
Oh my gosh, I have made it. I'm making $20,000. What are you talking about? Wow. And then I started, and the reality hits of like, wait, so my paycheck is $600, but my rent is $590.
And I got to still eat, electric,
and get gas.
water.
Yeah, how does this work? I was very unprepared for that part of adulthood.
And It sounds like you learned the hard way,
Oh,
which I
100%.
prefer that way. I
Yes.
did the same thing, and I think you should. When it comes to that, it sounds like there wasn't anyone to say, hey, this is the foundation.
No.
This is what you should do.
My mom was never taught that, so she didn't know how to teach that to me.
And it's nothing against them.
No, absolutely not.
Because my parents didn't teach me
Right.
that, and they taught me what they only knew.
Absolutely.
And it's up to us to then teach what we know down to, for kids or anything like that, our family members or significant others. But that's, I've always thought of that. I never disrespect that.
No.
They taught me what they knew at the time.
Listen, parents are experiencing life for the first time as well.
No.
They don't know everything.
Nope.
All they can do is teach you what they do know. So much of my kindness and my patience and my just figuring stuff out, that comes from my mom, and she taught me that. So, yeah, I didn't know how to balance a checkbook, or I didn't understand money, but I understood how to figure it out and how to go ask for help. And so that's what I did. I remember going to money counseling place because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I had gotten a part-time job, and I was like, well, I'm covering my bills, but people at work are saying I need a 401k. I had to have insurance. I'd never had health insurance before. So there was so much of it that I didn't know what I was doing. I just had to figure it out. But this is where I say, people should always look back and help those that come after them. Because if it weren't for so many people when I was in high school applying to college, because my mom didn't know how to do that, and I was trying to figure out FAFSA on how to get financial aid.
Yeah.
I was figuring it out when I got to this first radio job in Savannah. And there were times where everyone's eating lunch, and I'd be like, well, I'm just going to skip lunch. And they'd be like, we know you ain't got no money. Why don't you go pick it up? Or one of them, he used to say, you fly, I buy. And he was like, you go pick up the lunch, I'll pay for it. And those people saved me.
Yeah.
Because there were days where I was like, well,
I'm not eating.
I think they got some free donuts in the radio station break room someone
Let
brought.
me take some home too.
So this will be what I'll eat.
Yeah.
And so I feel like having those moments really instill this, which I already had it, and I didn't need to learn the lesson even more, but you learn grit.
Yeah.
And you learn what it means to go without in order for your dreams to come. Because at this time, friends that I had worked at the college radio station with who were like, I really want to do radio, but I don't know, it doesn't pay well, so I'm going to go into finance, or I'm going to go into insurance, or I'm going to go into this. And they were making $70,000, $80,000 a year, and I'm looking at them like, I'm making $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
I should have gone into that. But then when I look at my life now, it has paid off.
God has a different journey for all of us.
100%.
And we need patience.
Yes.
And that time, will come for us in our journey of life. That's just the way I see it. And yes, social media for sure can get you jealous. And it can be like, oh my God, so-and-so's doing this. Why don't I do that? And it's like, no. Stay on your path. Just have some patience. It will come.
100%. And that was such a hard thing for me because, by this point, I'm like, I have been struggling. I have been working. Why is nothing paying off? And it continued to sort of be that way. And it wasn't until I was probably 26 where life finally said, okay, you've learned a bunch of lessons.
Yeah.
Let me just make it a little bit easier for you. And so I had my first taste of success. When I had been doing a show in Panama City, that's where I first met Holly. We were doing a show with someone else, and we got our first job in Tampa in 2011. And we were like, we're being called up to the big leagues. CBS Radio, that doesn't exist anymore, had hired us, and I was making good money for the first time. I was like, yes, all the sacrifice. So this is what it's for.
Before you dive into that, how did you meet your co-host, Holly?
So actually, that's a fun story. So when I was in Savannah making the $20,000 a year, I was like, I got to get out. Because I was producing a conservative news talk morning show, and that's not where my views are. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I'm glad we're recording this. Say that again? I'm gonna send you a clip of just that on your Insta.
Oh yeah. I've talked about it before. When you're young, you can't say no.
Yeah.
And
you got to say yes.
You have to say yes.
Yeah.
So I was sort of like what they call a utility player, where on a bunch of the different radio stations, you'd hear me fill in for someone that wasn't there. I did a lot of administrative stuff behind the scenes. Yeah. And after the first couple of months, they're like, all right, cool. You know, your 90-day probationary period is done, even though we know that you're a good worker, but we just know how you would be full time. And they're like, well, the only full time spot we have is producing the conservative news talk morning show.
That's why I love you, because our views in politics are different. However, we can still get along.
Right.
You know, and
right.
you and I can still talk, have a good time. But, you know, it's that grit that you have inside of you that you got to get it done. You know?
100%. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it.
Bite my tongue.
And so I did the traffic reports, and I produced behind the scenes, scheduling interviews and stuff like that. And so that was hard for me. And that's when I learned.
Why was it hard?
Because I didn't have a voice. And that's when I really learned, because I knew I always wanted to be on the radio, but I didn't know, like, what's my brand? Because the brand wasn't a thing in 2007 that people were talking about a lot.
You have a brand? What?
I know, right?
Like, that's
right.
Your name is a brand? What?
Right. Like no one was
that's
talking.
It was.
Yeah, no one was saying that. And so what would happen is, you know, the host, he was doing his job. Shout out Bill Edwards at a WTKS in Savannah. He was doing what he was paid and what he believes was right. So he would be talking on these political issues. And this was, you know, George W. Bush time, and Obama was starting to run. And so I'm sitting in this little glass studio next to him, getting ready for my traffic reports, listening to what he's saying. And I'm just in my studio like, so he's going to say all that. And then he's going to come to me for traffic. And I'm supposed to just smile and be like, that's right, Bill. And so after 6 months of that, I went to my boss and I was like, if you need me to stay and do this, I can. But one, I'm going to be looking for another job, because if I don't have a voice to speak up, I can't do this. This is killing me.
Yeah.
And they were like, we get it. Well, this is not the vehicle for you to express that, because at the end of the day, this is a business, and this is a conservative news talk show in a conservative town.
At that point, were you like, maybe I don't want to do politics on air? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
That's always been one of my, like, if I get out of music radio is what I do.
Don't go to CNN.
Not if it exists then.
The only time I'll be watching is if you send me clips on IG of you on CNN. That's the only time I'll watch you.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. I wouldn't want to go on like a cable news show. It would probably be radio or podcast.
And that's the lovely part about today is Miguel can create his own.
100%.
You know, because you already have a following, but you can create your own. Like, you have a voice.
Right.
Like, you can do what you want to do. You just have to take action to do it.
100%.
And you're the type of person to do that.
Right. Absolutely. And so that's what it taught me of like, okay, I know that I'm passionate about politics.
Yep.
But I also know that I can't have my voice stifled because I have a lot of things to say, and me just sitting here and not being able to say it. So that's when I applied for this radio morning show. Or actually, I take that back. I went to one of my friends who I went to college with, moved to Panama City right as I graduated. So this is about a year into Savannah. He had been in Panama City now. And he was like, hey, I know you're trying to get out of Savannah. There's this morning show conference in Charlotte that I'm going to with my new co-host, Holly, who just moved to Panama City from Ohio. And this was the spring of 2008.
Okay.
And he was like...
Right before the crash.
Right before the crash. And he was like, why don't you come with us to this conference? Just pretend like you're on our morning show.
God, so you came to Charlotte in 2008?
Yeah, I came here in 2008.
Now look what it is.
Right? Which is wild to me.
It's crazy.
Like wild. Like when we came here in 2008 for that conference, we stayed at the Epicenter at the Loft Hotel.
What was it?
The Epicenter.
What was it? And now it's bankrupt.
I know, right?
I remember the Epicenter.
Right.
Now it's bankrupt. And
absolutely. Now they're trying with the Queen's Quarter or whatever they're calling it. But like, then it was, I mean, all the restaurants.
Everything's moving south.
Oh, absolutely.
South End or NODA.
Loso. Yes.
No one
it's
wants
all
the
just
city anymore.
But that's what was so crazy is it was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. But that weekend, Holly and his name is Kramer, we were all pretending to be a morning show as I'm trying to like network and see like what other morning shows need a producer or anything like that. And the three of us were like, we actually would make a good morning show.
Bullshit.
And so I went back to Savannah. I kept applying to different radio stations. And then by the summer of 2008, they were like, okay, we know you're making $20,000 in Savannah. We can only pay you part-time, but you'll get to be on our show as a producer and a third mic. And I was like, let's go.
I love that you're very valuable. I don't know you know that personally,
Right.
but I'm sure your significant other would say the same thing. But in business, from what you're telling me right now, you're very valuable. Why? Because you know every aspect of it.
Right. I've done everything.
Correct. And why? There's no reason to let Miguel go. For
Right.
any reason.
Right.
Because he can move in different type of departments if needed.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think for those that are listening out there, if you're young, what I would take away from this is that do everything. And there's a big catch-22 is, yes, you need to stay focused and laser focused. Miguel stayed laser focused in the radio industry. However, in that industry, in that niche, you then diversified in different departments to where now you are very, very valuable to any radio station you go to, and they would not want to lose you.
Right.
And I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. I learned from the very beginning, you never say no.
Yep.
You always learn everything that you can do because it makes you better at what it is you eventually want to do. So if you want to be the CEO or if you want to be the face of a radio station as the morning show host, I understand what the salespeople do, what the people that schedule the commercials do, what the front office manager does, the promotions kids do. I've done it all. And so it really makes you understand the complete full picture of what it is that we're trying to accomplish every single day. And so that's why when they said, hey, we want to make you part-time, but, you know, you get to be on a morning show, a fun morning show that's not about politics, I was like, sign me up, let's go.
Yep.
So that's when I moved in with Holly, only meeting her once in Charlotte. Because I was part-time, I couldn't afford anything on my own. So I met Holly once in Charlotte, and then that summer I moved in with her, and we started doing the show together with the host Kramer at the time.
Wow.
And
Very
so
nice.
we did that for 3 years. And then that's when we went to Tampa for the first time in 2011. And that's when we were like, okay, we got some success. We're making some decent money now. And then after a year of doing that, CBS Radio said, nope, this radio station's not doing it. We want to do something else.
Really?
So we got let go.
Wow.
And that was the first time where I felt like my entire life was me just fighting, but the momentum was always behind my sales, and it was always
And
like,
you guys were still rooming together, right?
yeah, we were still rooming together. And
So when did that conversation come up of, hey, let's just do Miguel and Holly?
well, so we lost a job, and that was in the summer of 2012. And so the three of us, Holly, Kramer, and I, went to like Boston and Sacramento and Phoenix and some other places to interview for radio jobs. And everyone kept telling the three of us no, when just like a year ago, we were like the hot new things that everyone wanted to hire. But then that's when we realized that the three of us, we all had a different plan. And so back in Panama City where we were, the big manager was like, hey, I know you always talked about, you always wanted to host your own morning show. Well, we have someone that we hired after you all left, but how would you like to do a morning show in the afternoon? So you're coming back to a community that already knows you and loves you, and you can just learn how to host a show.
Love it.
And I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of been used to being with Kramer and Holly and being the producer, third mic. I don't know. Give me a minute to think about it. So I remember I called my mom and I was like, Mom, what do you think? And she was like, if you don't get
She got to get through that phone and slap you.
your ass back to Panama City when you've been talking about hosting your own show since you were in middle school and you gonna say no? And I was like, you right.
I'm going.
going back to Panama City. So I did my afternoon show there for about 2.5 months, and it did so well. And the other morning show that had replaced us, they were kind of struggling, and I don't think they were really happy with the station and the city. So they ended up letting them go and moving us to mornings with the another co-host I had at the time. And then
Now-
Holly moved back to Panama City with us.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. Going from afternoon to mornings, Miguel, you wake up at like 4 a.m.
3:50.
3:50. To get on the air by what time?
6 a.m.
6 a.m. You know, so how was that transition mentally, physically with your body from going to afternoons to oh shit, now I got to wake up at 3:50, you know, some days a little earlier. You can't go out and party. And you got to be in, you know, ready to go by 6 a.m. And, you know, how long you're running it all morning, you know, that can take a toll. Your whole body's on a different schedule now. I know the first couple days and maybe week is definitely adjusting.
Right. Yeah, so like going from different day parts like that, especially at that point in my life, it was difficult because when we were in Panama City the first time for 3 years, we were doing mornings. Then in Tampa, we were doing mornings. And so then when going back to Panama City, it was afternoons. So my body was used to waking up early.
Yeah. So you're a morning person.
Right, I am. So
what do you do in the morning?
I'm not.
You get a cup of coffee?
So then at that point, I would listen to other morning shows online. I would listen to that morning show that, you know, just to see what they were doing so we could not cover the same topics in the afternoons.
Smart.
And stuff like that. And then I would go work out and probably just do stuff around the house. But it was weird because at that point, my entire adult life had been 3, 4, 5, 6 years of morning radio. So now I have like this free time in the morning as opposed to the afternoons. So it was weird for me. So I would like get to work super early because I'd like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do except for be at the radio station. And then by the time my show was over, my afternoon show was over at 7, my friends would be like, hey, you actually get to like come out with us and like have dinner. And I'm like, I can't because
I got to go to bed.
I'm sleepy, even though I don't have to be up early. It was weird.
Yeah.
So after doing that for 3 months, when they said you're going back to mornings, it kind of was a relief.
Okay, good.
Because I could never find my right schedule because I've been doing it. And now it's been, you know, almost 20 years that I've been doing morning radio. So
20 years.
Yeah. So I can't imagine. I mean, yes, you always say, if you would put me in afternoons and pay me the same amount of money, yeah, I'd do it. But I don't know what I would do with my day because I'm so used to it. But it is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
To do morning radio.
Everything.
You do. And especially like when you're young, it takes a minute to learn.
Yeah.
And so people always, I just had people ask me this weekend, they say like, do you ever get used to waking up at 3:15? And I'm like, no, you never do. When that alarm goes off, you're always angry.
Yeah.
And you're always like, fuck this.
You got to get a whoop. These things vibrate. And it vibrates. It's a whoop.
A whoop?
Yeah, a whoop.
I need a whoop in the morning.
So I'm big into health, so it tracks my sleep, how deep I'm sleeping, my REM cycle, and it's very spot on. And I share it with some of the team members. I share it with some other friends, so we can track each other on how well we're doing with our health. But what I really like about it is that when it wakes me up at 6 a.m., it does like little short vibrations on my arm. So then I wake up and I just double tap it and I'm up.
Okay, I like that.
It's peaceful instead of the
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't stand that. But I like a good whoop in the morning.
You got to check it out. Oh, you're funny.
Oh, but yeah, so it is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's a sacrifice. And I know that sounds stupid because you're like, well, you get to go to concerts and you get to like talk on the radio. But over the course of the past, almost 20 years of doing morning radio, I can't tell you the amount of dinners, happy hours,
everything.
Events.
Just showing your face.
Right.
All
I mean,
that.
just for instance, like we have the awesome chance that we get to go see the Broadway shows that come through Charlotte at the Blumenthal.
Mm-hmm.
I always have to leave at intermission because they're used on Tuesdays at 7:30. And I'm like, I want to stay so bad. But I know that if I sacrifice, you're not going to get home till 11:30. And when that alarm goes off at 3:15, I'm crap. I'm not going to be great on the show.
Oh, my whoop said I got 2 hours and 29 minutes on Saturday of sleep.
What were you doing?
Nothing. but it tracks all of that. But yeah, you're not going to feel good.
No.
You got to power through it.
Right.
Especially one thing you said. It's definitely hard and challenging. How is it with a significant other putting up with your schedule?
Oof.
Obviously everyone needs some attention. Some more than others.
Right.
But everyone needs some attention, and you also want to give that attention to someone who you love. So how is that?
So I will say that in my 20s and early 30s in relationships, I wasn't the best. There was no compromise.
At least you can agree that you were not.
No, I can agree because I was so focused on my career. And I was like, okay, so here's my schedule. I go to bed 8:30. I wake up at 3:15. I don't do dinners. If it's not before, or if it needs to be between 5 and 6:30. I can't go to a movie between Sunday night and Thursday night. So these are my parameters.
Yeah.
And I would not budge at all. Then I met my husband, and I felt like things were different with him. And I was like, this feels different, but I just got the biggest job of my life, and I'm not going to compromise. So
And you communicated that to him.
I did. And he was like, I would never take anything away from your career.
Love that.
And like that was the first time, because before I had exes at the time.
That was probably like a,
Right.
wow, someone
Right.
actually appreciates this.
Absolutely.
Because I've had exes too that are like, when are you coming home? You know, I need to see you.
Right.
Blowing up my phone throughout the day, and it's like, hey, look, like I can't do this. Like I can't.
Absolutely. And so I remember one time an ex saying, and I'm not saying this is wrong of him to say that. I think that it was just different expectations. I was in my 20s, and he was like, am I ever going to be above radio?
Oh God, women say that too.
And I looked this poor man in the face, and I was like, probably not.
Yeah.
What? But I was in my 20s. I was very ambitious. Now.
But that's the thing, is that you have to sacrifice in your 20s.
Right.
You would not be here today if you said to that individual, yeah, you'll be above radio.
Right.
You would
Right.
not. I wouldn't know you. You wouldn't be here today. There may not have been a Miguel and Holly. Who knows?
Right, right.
But you had to sacrifice, and that's what a lot of people don't understand, is like you have to sacrifice those nights. You have to sacrifice hey, I'm sorry, you're not.
Right.
And I made it very clear with the wonderful woman who I date now. The first date, I said, here are my priorities. It's business, it's my health, it's my son, and then you. I need to make sure my business is thriving.
Right.
I need to make sure my health is thriving so I can be the best father to my son.
Right.
And then you come right after it. If you don't feel comfortable with that, that's okay. I
Absolutely.
can find you a finance bro in Charlotte.
And there's lots of them.
There's lots of them. And that's what I said to her. And thankfully, she comes from a family that is very well connected, very business oriented, so she understands.
Right.
But yeah, it's unbelievable.
It is, and so many of them were like, it's and so we try to make it work, and it would not.
Yeah.
So then when I met my husband, and he was like, I'm not going to take that away from you, and I was like,
Whoa.
But then
Are you real?
Right, literally.
You sure?
Right.
Like-
But then what was great is that he has his own business.
I love that.
And so he was like, I'm trying
I'm
to do the
busy as
same.
hell.
Right. He's like, so
You don't do it to me.
Right. So don't be texting me all day because I have a painting business, because I won't be able to get back with you all day because I'm hanging from a crane for a 10-foot or 10-story building.
Crazy.
And I was like,
Deal.
point taken. Got it.
Yeah.
And so that really has been foundation of our relationship. But as we've gotten older and, you go through engagement and you get married, and for me, I've learned that there has to be sort of like a 1A and a 1B, where it's like, okay, I'm choosing you to be with for the rest of my life. Radio isn't always going to be in my life. So I do want to invest in you as much as I've invested in my career. But I think that happens with maturity, and I think that happens with learning how to balance. And also, I've reached a certain point that I also don't say yes to everything. Because also with getting older, I start to say, hey, my time on this earth is very short.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to go to my grave being like, wow, you had a great segment that Tuesday at 7:30. My God. Like, now I have a husband and I have a whole nother family that I also want to invest in, because that's what I want to be remembered for, also along with everything I've done in radio.
I love it. I love it. And so what brought you, obviously radio brought you up to Charlotte, but you're living in Tampa, and opportunity came in Charlotte, and you and Holly said, hey, well, does Holly live here now?
So here's a fun story about how that all, because of course, a great
At
person in
first,
radio.
I don't think she did when I asked.
So no, she does not live here.
So she doesn't. Okay. Does she live back in Tampa?
She splits her time between here and Tampa.
Got
it. So she comes up once a month for like a week at a time, because she has an ex-husband they share a daughter.
Oh, yep.
And then she has a fiance who also has a daughter with an ex-wife. So, and then at the time when this whole opportunity came up, she also was taking care of her mother, who was about to go into hospice care. So she was like, how am I supposed to take all these people and bring them to a new city?
You can't.
And also for an industry that is notoriously known for saying, hey, come on over we love you. And then after a year,
goodbye.
Cutting your job.
Yeah. And the lovely thing too is all you need is a camera and Wi-Fi, and you know she can do it in Singapore.
100%.
With a backdrop you don't even know.
Absolutely. And that's the great one of the, and I hate saying it that way because people have lost people, but you know, we've all learned, I should say it this way. We've all learned so much since the pandemic. And one of the things that the pandemic taught us is that you don't necessarily have to be in the same building as everyone else. And so I think if this job offer would have come before the pandemic, we would not have been able to have this arrangement. But because of it, they were like, cool, Holly can stay in Tampa. We'll bring her up once a month. And Miguel, you can move to Charlotte to get to know the city.
I love it. I love it. You know, and that's good. She's down there with family, and you guys can still run a beautiful brand. Let's talk about the branding. You know, how did the branding Miguel and Holly come out? Obviously, it's your names, but like, how did you guys say, hey, we're going to run with this, you know, this type of branding and we're going to blast it out everywhere? Talk to us about that. Talk to us about the ideas of, I don't even know the name of it because it's so crazy. What is it? The one date? What do you guys do?
Blown Off.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Just a quick reminder to make sure you never miss an episode. Stay connected with us by following us on social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok at Chris_Salerno_. And don't forget to subscribe to YouTube to catch the video versions of our episode. You'll get exclusive content, behind the scenes footage, and much more. Head over to YouTube, Chris_Salerno now, and hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned because we've got more great content coming right after this.
Blown Off. Yeah. We'll get to Blown Off here in a second. But talk to us about the branding side. How did you guys come together and say, hey, like, this is the brand we want to create?
Yeah. So when we were working with that guy Kramer, when we were in Panama City, then in Tampa, then when I went back to Panama City to host my own show, it was the Miguel Show with Mandy and Holly. And then once we did that in Panama City for 2 years, another radio station in Tampa in 2015 said, hey, we want to hire Miguel and Holly. And so when we started there, they were like, well, let's just keep everything the same and keep it the Miguel Show. And so when we moved to Tampa, it was called the Miguel Show.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't really comfortable with that because I'm like, well, it was different when it was, you know, the Miguel Show with Mandy and Holly, and then we had a producer. There were 4 people in the room. So, and I was like the quarterback of the show. But now that there's just 2 people in the room, it sounds kind of weird.
Yeah.
But at that time, we were like, well, we're in a new bigger city, in a big market. I didn't want to push back because I knew that there was one champion of us going to that radio station in Tampa. And everyone else was kind of like, well, we got to trust him.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, well, I don't want to make any waves. I don't want to push back too much. Maybe if we, you know, get some traction behind us, we can talk about it. Well, then after 2 years, Holly is the one that said, hey, I really just don't feel comfortable with it being just the Miguel Show. And I'm like, you know, I feel the same way. Like, let's do something about it.
Oh, I love that.
And so we had a boss and we went to him and she led the conversation and he was like, well, Miguel, what do you think? And I think it's only fair because this is both of our visions, you know? Our show has morphed from doing a shell of what the previous guy that was our host show was to us truly understanding and figuring out what it is that we stand for and what we want you, the listener, to get from our show when you listen or interact with us on social media. And so our boss at the time said, okay, cool, let's make it happen. And we were like, we just stressed for 2 years over asking this question when it was just okay, cool,
and that's the biggest thing is that people will do that. They'll stress. They'll run through their head. That little guy in your head that says, the fear guy that says, don't do it, don't do it. You don't know what's going to happen. They may, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, just ask.
Just do it. Just do it.
Just be genuine and just ask.
Because the most they can do is say no and then you move on.
Yeah.
And then you figure out how to ask again.
If they said no, who knows? You guys may have came together and said, why don't we just do our own thing?
Right.
Let's do our own podcast.
Right.
You know, and let's run with it ourselves. We have the following. They'll more than likely, hopefully they're not listening. They're going to follow.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's the thing about following is that you guys created a strong brand.
Right.
And it could be detrimental to any of those. For example, Sean Hannity's, I think, still on Fox, so you're not too conservative. There's one guy who left Fox and he created his own brand. What was
Tucker
his name?
Carlson?
Tucker Carlson. So he got fired or whatever. He left. It's always drama.
He got fired.
Yeah. So, but look at him now.
Right.
He has his what is it, Tucker something. He has his own brand, and I'm sure he's probably making a lot more money because now he can also sell products that he endorses and things like that. So if that boss at the time would say, "Hey, no, it's just going to be the Miguel show," you guys may have gotten together and said, "Hey, we're off on our own."
100%.
But you spent 2 years really trying to overthinking on it.
When we could have just asked the simple question.
Yeah.
And they said yes. And so that's where the Miguel and Holly brand was truly born. I feel like that's when we came into our own, and Holly felt more comfortable speaking up.
Oh, I bet.
And because it's a partnership of what we do. And so from
I bet
there,
the conversation. I bet her confidence increased too substantially.
Absolutely. There's something to be said when your name is on a show.
Yeah.
That's something that I learned from Ryan Seacrest years ago. Is he used to always say, and not like he told me, I've never met the man. I think I've been in the same room with him a couple of times. He's on my radio station, but I've never met him.
There you go.
But I've had the same talent coaches that he's had.
Nice.
And they have said to me that one of his things that he used to say is always make it the name of your show because it's harder to fire you. If it's just the Hits 96.1 morning crew.
Oh, okay, cool. Next.
That's interchangeable.
Yeah.
But when it's the Miguel and Holly show, that's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And so that's always stuck with me.
You got to go find another Miguel, which you're not going to do.
Right? And some radio stations have tried to do that.
I'm sure.
Not to us, but like to other friends of mine in the radio world that were named just like Steve.
Chris, or anyone. Yeah. Hey.
They tried to get another Steve or Chris to replace them that sounded kind of similar and be like, well, maybe they won't know. And I'm like, that's how little they think of talent sometimes. It's changed, thankfully, through the years.
I think the branding aspect of you, with these influencers, Logan Paul, all these big people, you're Mr. Beast. You created a personal brand. Miguel and Holly has created a personal brand. And I'm not saying, if you guys decided to say, hey, we're more valuable than we think we are.
Right.
Let's go ahead and reach out to some other radio stations and have them bid on us.
Right.
Hey, we'll come over to you, or contracts up. I'm sure you guys have a contract. Contracts up.
Right.
We'll come over to you, Spotify, wherever it is.
Right.
But we want X amount of dollars because we're bringing these loyal people over. We can prove X amount in ad revenue, all of that.
But that's
the business side of it.
It is, and that's why we always say it's show business, and that's the thing that people don't teach you about is that you, and I was this way too, it's fun. I just get to talk on the radio and connect with listeners. But there's this whole business aspect of it that you have to understand and learn the dollars and cents of how much revenue is attached to our show. How do I treat the clients? If they fired me, would any of my clients that I endorse make a stink about it and threaten to pull money away from the station? How can I get them to feel that passionate about me? Yeah. So that's part of the job, the business part that no one teaches you, that you just have to learn along the way.
Yeah, most definitely. Now let's talk about what's that little segment thing you guys do?
Blown Off.
Blown Off. Who comes up with stuff like that? Obviously, I'm sure you guys are sitting in a room and you're like, hey, we got to bring some excitement, and some stuff that people are actually going to want to listen to, which I'm a very busy individual. Evenings, that's some of my entertainment. Yes. I will see that come across my feed and I have to click on your story and I have to go into it because I want to watch the whole thing because it's hilarious.
Yes. So Blown Off isn't a new concept. Like I can't sit here and be like, well, we sat in a room and
it's patented.
Right.
Yeah.
What we always say in radio is if you've heard it on our show, it's been stolen 3 times. Yeah. Like we all have heard it. Like
it's just a little different.
Right. Everyone puts their own twist on it. So when I was growing up in Atlanta, one of the morning shows that I used to listen to with my Walkman was The Burt Show in Atlanta. And that's the morning show that really changed my relationship with morning radio, where it was just like, well, this is funny, to more like, I feel a part of this community. And so he used to do a segment, and I think he called it like Second Date Update or something like that, where the concept is simple. You go on a date, you don't hear back from the person, we call them to find out why. And so being in high school, I would hear that and be like, this is so crazy.
Yeah.
And then when I got into my 20s and it happened to me.
You're like, these people are nuts.
Well, then I was like, it happens to me all the time. what am I doing? Can a radio station call someone that didn't call me back after a date so I can figure out why? And then,
I don't think I would do that, honestly, though.
See, you probably have and you don't know it.
No, I would. Well, wait, which one?
Oh, well, you mean ghost someone or call a radio station?
I've ghosted someone. Hell yeah, I've ghosted someone. Damn right, I've ghosted someone. I blocked them and left. I've got up at the dinner table and said, "You don't look like your profile. I'm out." Oh, dead serious.
Good.
But I don't think I could call a radio station and say, "Hey," because I'm more of a, "Hey, Miguel, what's going on? Like, do you not like me? Cool. I hope you're well. You know, enjoy your life. I'm on my way." Like, that's how I am. But yeah, I don't know if I could do that.
I think
I'm glad that people can because it's funny to listen to.
Well, and what has happened is like, so we did it in Tampa, and people loved it. And because at first you start out doing like once a week,
because there's not that many,
right?
But
There's not a lot of people.
People that are listening are like, well, I just got ghosted, so I might as well try it too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so then it starts to build up, and then you have just like a line of people that you can just endlessly tap from. And the only reason why that happens, and this goes back to branding, is because we've set a comfortable table for you. Like very
not hostile.
Right.
It's a individual. There's no, one-sided.
We're not making fun of anybody.
We're all neutral here. We just want to know what happened.
Absolutely. Now, I'm not going to lie. There are times where people have gotten me riled up, or someone was just very offensive about how they were talking about someone, and I do not like disrespect.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like the way someone looks, smells, body weight, there's always a way to say something without being rude. But if you're rude on my show, and this person is sitting here just trying to understand why you didn't call them back, you don't got to be a dick about it.
No.
And so when you're a dick, I think that makes me a dick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot nicer way to do stuff like that. Like if, I smell your breath, I'm like, oh, here's a piece of gum.
Right, 100%.
Do I need gum? Yeah, you need gum.
Right.
Right. I think something, you can be a lot nicer with presenting certain things like that.
Right, and that's why in that segment, you hear us a lot of times, first we're shocked because we're like, wow, you just sat here for a minute and a half and didn't explain to us that you have a shrine to Pennywise the clown in your house. Like,
where was I? I was flying back from Virginia, and I was on the plane, and it was right when I got connected to Wi-Fi. And I was flying in there, and I heard the one about the cemetery. And there was a cemetery date.
Yes.
And I was like, what the hell? I said, a first date at a cemetery? I was like, I don't believe that happened in Charlotte.
Right.
But it's crazy.
But here's the thing is when that person, and I don't remember like the genders or who, I just remember the scenario.
Yeah.
But I remember when they said, well, they took us on a date to the cemetery and it was weird. I'm like, okay, yes, it's weird.
That's strange.
It's strange. But I also know a guy here in Charlotte, I can't remember his name, but he runs the account for CLT Spooky, where he loves all things of the macabre and the creepy. And so one of his projects is he organizes funds to go clean gravestones and to go clean up graveyards and stuff. So I can see someone in that world being like, well, this is normal. Like, we appreciate the dead. And so, but my whole thing is always communication.
That's what I was going to say. It's
you can't surprise someone with that.
In these days, I think that most women are hesitant,
right.
Especially when they meet someone on social media. So they're like, where are we going? Like, I need to know where we're going.
Right.
Now, if I told a woman, hey, we're going to have a date, I'm going to set it all up, I'll pick you up, I think she would still ask, well, where are we going?
Right.
But if I pulled up to a cemetery, she'd probably get out running. She'd probably be like, what's this dude doing? Which I don't blame her. I would do the same thing.
Absolutely.
I'd be like, what are we doing at the cemetery? Like, you about to bury me? Like,
yes.
So I think the communication is huge. It's like, hey, what type of food do you like?
Right.
And then after you warm up, after a couple of dates in public, then you can maybe, I don't know about the cemetery one, but,
Well, but this is what
like a hot air balloon.
Literally, like most of the messaging that people get from Blown Off, and I love when parents come up to us and they're like, my kids probably shouldn't be listening to Blown Off, but it's such a great teachable moment because you hear these people clearly just crossing their wires and not listening. Yeah. And that's what most of that segment is. It's like, yeah, it's the funny, like the graveyard or whatever, but most of it is like, hey, did you communicate to her that you want to take her there? And also, did you hear what he said?
Yeah, on why he picked that location.
Absolutely. And so much of it.
Still, though, it's a
I know.
I'm not picking that as a location. We're going to like Restoration Hardware, a rooftop, or Steak 48.
Oh, fancy. He got money. Okay.
We're not going to a cemetery.
But for some people, like that's their value.
But like I understand is, hey, let's do a picnic at the Whitewater Center.
Right.
Or let's, if there's some concert going on in South Park or the Bowl down in Ballantyne, like let's go have a bite to eat and watch something. Like cemetery though, like that's a little too much.
Listen, like I said, that's not my first pick. I would not go, but for that person, that was really important to them. And we had people in the comments on that were like, yes, they should have communicated it, but it's not weird. Yeah. And I'm like, to each their own. I'm not, who am I to judge?
That's the lovely part about life, and that's how I see life. And I know everyone doesn't see life like this, but, you can do what you want to do. It's your journey of life. If you're not, over, above, and beyond rudely disrespecting someone, you don't need to be like in my environment. But you can do whatever you want. You can live your life. You can enjoy your life because it's your journey.
Right.
Like that's how I see it.
And that is how you hear us approach so much on our show.
And I think that's it's so neutral too, which is nice. That anyone can go on there and speak their mind, and you guys are going to speak your mind, but it's not one way or the other. And that's why I said, I love being your friend because I'm conservative. We know that, but we can still get along.
Right. Absolutely.
Will I still send you funny Trump stuff? 100%. But we can still laugh about it together. Right. I'm not above and beyond, we're not friends because you see another party in a different, like that's not who I am.
But then at the same time too is that you can also listen to when I say, hey, some of the stuff and some of the rhetoric around some of the things that someone like a Trump says, it's hurtful for someone like me who's black and gay, and also understand that like some of it can be hurtful. Like it's okay to talk about policy and things like that, but like when it gets to the personal attacks and stuff, that's where I'm like, okay, we can laugh, but I'm also going to push back a little bit.
Agreed. Send me what he sent. That's that. I would like to see it. But like for example, I have a friend this morning, big Democrat, hates everything about a Republican, hates everything. But he still likes me. But he sent me like a big thing this morning saying Democrats outperformed the Republicans in the stock market. So I said, okay. Now he said it was like 2,000%. So I was like, that's a little hefty. Let me ask my assistant ChatGPT. So I called my assistant up, ChatGPT.
How you doing?
And ChatGPT did say that it was like I think Democrats were like 11.9 and Republicans were like 8.7. So there was in the past 50 years.
Okay.
Now, obviously, ChatGPT said all presidents had different ups and downs, different type of swings, things like that. But overall, the S&P, the Democrats did outperform the Republicans. So I said, hey, that's what the statistics are. That's fine.
Right.
I got into a debate with a person who leaned more towards liberal. He's from Texas, and he said, I bet you, Chris, that the Texas cities voted Democrat. I said, there's no way. I said, no way.
Right.
He pulled up on the map each Texas city, Austin, Dallas, Houston, just the city, voted all Democrat. And I was like, I would never have thought that.
Right.
But because Texas is so large, it turns a red state.
Right.
And so I'm like, hey, you're right. Like, I'm wrong. Like, you're right. I definitely wasn't expecting that.
Right.
But I'm the type of person that I can do that. You know, if you bring factual information, like we discussed off here, factual information to me, I'm okay saying, hey, I'm wrong.
Right.
You're 100% right.
And that's where we should be.
Yeah.
It should be sort of like, so when I first realized that I like politics when I was in high school, and this was during the George Bush, Al Gore time when I was in high school, when I was like, I know I'm a Democrat, can't tell you why, but I'm a Democrat and I don't like George Bush. George W. Bush. And so it wasn't until I got to college that I had a political science professor, Dr. Sims, who also had her husband who was also a state legislator in Georgia. And so I would go to her office during her office hours and be like, can I just ask you questions?
Yeah,
like,
I'm just here in shadow.
I just loved hearing stories about how back in the day, and I believe her husband was a Democrat, Chuck Sims, I believe. Back in the day, they would, in Georgia, debate from a Democrat, from a Republican, and go back and forth, and then at the end of the day, they'd all go and have some bourbon and shake hands and be like, you know what? You said your side, I said my side. We're both trying to see the best version of America. We just think that we can take route difference getting there.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we take the best of both worlds and then we create something beautiful for everybody.
Yeah.
We've gotten away from that.
Yeah.
Now it's like, well, your side wants to kill us. Your side wants to create a socialist society, when it's like most people want to have money to feed their kids, to be able to have rights,
go back to the
and just live life. Go
back to the basics.
Absolutely.
And I think that, and I hate to say this, but as time goes on, I think it's going to get worse.
Oh, 100%.
I think it's just going to increase. You know, these riots that we're seeing, it's like, okay, well, I mean, they already light buildings on fire, so it's like, okay, well, what about if we use an explosive? Or, hey, can we test this and see how far? It's like a kid with the parent trying to, test their ability. Like, I want a cookie, I want a lollipop, to see how far they go. I think in the next decade or 2 decades, I hate to say it, but I think that, we're going to see this type of back and forth clash start to increase even higher and higher.
I hope.
I hope not.
My hope is that we have a politician that will come forth and bring the rhetoric down.
Yeah.
And that they can say, hey, you have been listening to Trump all these years. You as liberals have been listening to this messaging or whatever from these talking heads, because we don't know who's going to be the leader, into the next election. We don't know yet.
They need to hurry up and find someone.
They do. It's going to be a minute. We got to get through the midterms first. But my hope is that we find someone, and let's say it's someone from my side of the aisle, a liberal, that will look at someone like you and say, hey, you're a Trump supporter. You're not a bad person.
Yeah.
Some of the things that you believe in, not my favorite.
But that's okay.
But you're not a bad person.
You can disagree on that.
But here's the problem is that someone like you is reasonable, but then you have so many on that side.
Oh, yeah. Both sides.
Who are not. Yes, this is true.
I've even my friend, he said some choice words to me.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, I still like you. It's okay.
Right. And so they're just sticking up for what they believe, but we need someone to bring the rhetoric down.
My thing is no matter what, and this is how I see it, is no matter what you do, there's always going to be scrutiny.
Right.
You guys on social media, I'm sure there's people that don't like you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's people that don't like Holly just because of how you look. Like,
Absolutely.
that's just how it is. And so no matter who sits up in that position, whether Democrat, Republican, no matter what they do,
right,
one party or the other is going to find someone and saying, they did this wrong because it should have been done this way. And it's like, okay, like it's been done, like it is what it is.
Right.
Like,
and at the end of the day, I live in a neighborhood, I live in a townhouse, and I have neighbors across the street, beside me. I don't look at those people and go, are they Republican or Democrat? Yeah. I go, oh, that's Larry. Oh, that's Aaron. Yeah. Hey, Aaron, I don't know who you voted for, but when we go on vacation, can you just watch over my house? Like, we need to get back to that. But
100%.
Both sides have to tamp down the fingers and just understand that it's called the United States because we're supposed to be united. Yep. And we can debate because you fight with your family. Yeah. You fight with your family.
You still show up to cookout.
Absolutely. But then at the end of the day, you realize that it is us against everybody else, and we have to protect our own.
We do. And I think, especially with the things we saw recently, with the bombings, I don't think they're going to escalate it. We'll know more tonight and tomorrow.
Right.
But if we had something like, and I hate to say this, but like 2001, we were united.
Right.
I don't care if you're black, white, purple, Asian, doesn't matter. But United States came together and we're like, this doesn't happen on our own turf.
I hope that would happen.
I pray we can unite without something like that.
Right, 100%. Yeah. But my fear is that we didn't have social media back then.
I know.
That I feel like if something like that did happen, after literally 30 seconds, someone would be like, well, that didn't happen. That was actually a deep fake AI.
Those AI.
And it's like, oh my gosh, when can we take us back?
I will tell you, there's stuff with like the political stuff. I have to like do my research because I'm like, is this real? Is this not? AI is so legit.
Right.
I remember when that first video of AI came out with Will Smith eating spaghetti and his eyes were lopsided. It was like this. And I was like, oh my God. And everyone's like, this is AI. I'm like, give it a couple years. And then now it's like, is that Will Smith? Because it looks like, I mean, that's really.
You can't tell.
No. I mean, and so and that's the bad thing too. It's like with social media, it's like, is it true? Is it not true?
Right.
Do I have the whole story? Because if I say something and you believe that, well, I'm just saying it from one perspective.
Right.
And, but I left out that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chris, you didn't tell me the whole story.
Right.
Now you have a different opinion because I inserted something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as the world goes on with AI, with social media, I think it's going to be a lot harder.
Well, I think people need to take a beat when something happens.
Yeah.
That's why I used to back in the day on social media. As soon as a news story would happen, I would slap a post up on my Instagram or on my Instagram story and be like, all right, here's what's happening.
And it's like,
I don't do that anymore.
You can't.
It's very rare that you will find me posting news unless it's from a reputable source now, just because we can't. Even me, who is a media person, I don't work in the news, but I do work in the media. So I have been trained how to understand what is true, what is false, what sources to check. I still take an extra beat just to make sure that something is correct, because you just don't know. And it just becomes more and more so hard to discern what's real and what's not. And so I just feel like it makes me nervous for elections in the future when it comes to candidates and what people are believing is true about them.
My opinion on elections is at the state level, you should be able to run the election on how you want at a state level. If you want to, if you're doing governor, mayor, city councilman, if you want to do mail-in ballots, if you want to do paper ballots, if you want to do electronic ballots, you have the right to do whatever you want as a state.
Right.
But at a federal level, if we are nominating the United States president, at a federal level, I think it should be one across the board, meaning it's all going to be electronic. It's not going to be mail-in ballots, because that's a federal, different type of government, different type of body. It's over the whole United States. I think it should be one across the board. And at the state, if you're doing a governor, if you're doing a mayor, hey, whatever you guys want to do, you do that, because that's your local, government officials. But at the federal level across the whole United States, in my opinion, I think there should be one easy, simple, hey, the issue is like, okay, if you have a third-party ballot, one party says, hey, here's 200 million or here's $1 billion, then you start to sway. So it's like, it's very difficult, but I do think that it should be consistent at the federal level, and then at the state level, hey, if you want to do mail-in ballots, however you want to run yours, you can run them. But I think it gets complicated when Georgia does mail-in ballots. For example, North Carolina doesn't. And then now we're waiting. Right. Oh, Georgia, we got to wait 14 days before we count it. We got AI these days.
Right.
You're telling me you got to wait 14 days to count, to understand if your state's red or blue? I
see where you're going, but the only thing that scares me about that is the fact that what makes our election system safe is it's a patchwork of, like, Georgia does it one way, North Carolina does it one way, and so you can't have somebody get in and like sway an entire election for the whole country. But my fear,
I get that,
is when you have it on that scale, somebody can flip a switch in a different country or, put a...
I agree.
And so until we can figure out how to make it truly safe. And then I do think on that, when it comes to how people count ballots.
This turned into Miguel and Chris politics show.
I know, right? See, this is what always happens with me too, all the time.
I love it. Keep going.
But like, I thought how Florida, when I lived there for so long, how they did it so well is that when you would drop your ballot off before, or you would mail in your ballot from somewhere, I think a week before, and don't correct me, or please correct me if I'm wrong, they would count it before the election day. So as soon as like that morning would start, you would already know from the mail-in ballots. And then I think you had to like postmark it by a certain time before the election day. Whereas I want to say Pennsylvania or something like that, you had like even a week after or something like, I don't remember, but it was like, but they couldn't, no, you couldn't, it had to be postmarked by that day, but they couldn't start counting the ballots till that morning. So they've had like,
influx of it
for the past 2 weeks, but they're just sitting there on their hands because they say you can't count until. And so that's where you have the people like, oh, you're cheating. It's like, well, no, every state has different rules. And so I think if we can at least get on the same page about that, but I do like the fact that it's all siphoned off each state on their own, so you can't manipulate the whole system.
We can agree to disagree.
Right.
That's why we're friends. I think as technology goes and as AI goes, we're always going to have someone trying to hack us.
Right.
We're the United States.
Right.
Someone's always going to try to get into our system. They said Russia hacked the first Trump's election.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Right.
So I think we're always going to have those threats of hacking. I think with this next election, possibly another, that too as well. We'll find out. But
it's going to keep happening. I think
it will.
I think that we just have to get on some same page about making sure that people feel confident in their vote. Because that's one of the things that I always get emotional about on our show. So we don't talk politics on our morning show.
Just on this show.
Just on this show. And our podcast, too. We do. I always say on our on-air show, I say, hey, we will never tell you how to vote. We will not even tell you who we're voting for.
Good.
But if you want to know, listen to Miguel and Holly Uncensored on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere you listen to podcasts, and you'll know exactly who we're voting for.
There you go.
But I always tell people to vote, no matter who you are. It is the most precious thing that you have on this earth.
I know.
As an American citizen. That is how you make your voice heard.
My opinion, real quick, does Holly see the same vision as you when it comes to voting?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, then you need me on there because you got to have someone different. I mean, look at the View. They have that one different person.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll start calling you up and be like, come on,
I'm just
Chris.
saying, if you want me on there, go ahead and give me a ring. I think that, and this is what I do, is before I vote, I 100% agree with you. Everyone should vote. Before I vote, I watch both runnings,
right,
and I watch both debates. I watch both Democrats and Republican debates.
Right.
And once they're all said and done, I then make my decision. Now, I've leaned more conservative. I grew up conservative.
Right.
I tend to lean more conservative. I'm a business owner. But I do believe you should understand the other party before you actually just say, hey, I grew up as a Republican. I'm going to vote Republican. It is what it is. I think, in my opinion, you should see what the other party has to say. Because, look, Trump was a Democrat. He was a Democrat, and he moved to a Republican. And I don't also think that you should... Not saying you, but people should say, okay, we're going to label you. You're now in that category of Democrats. You're now in that category of Republican, or you're an independent. Because he was a Democrat, now he's a Republican. And they switch back and forth all the time up there.
Right. They just want to stay in power.
That's all they care about.
Right.
That's all they care about. But that's just my opinion. I think you should look at both parties before you make an informed decision.
100%. I do agree with that. I think what has changed and what's made it so personal is when you have people that will try to demonize a certain population. And so that's why, for instance, I have one of my really good best friends is trans. And when I've seen their struggle on speaking their truth and finally agreeing to blow up their lives to live in their truth, and then when I see politicians try to corral votes when they probably have a trans person in their family or in their life, but they're doing it to rile the base up just to get people to be like, yeah, bleep those trans people. They're trying to get in the bathroom. And I'm like, what news story have you seen about that? Because every trans person I know, they're just trying to live. That is it. And so I think that's when it becomes personal. And so I think that's why you have people that are like, okay, Chris, you're a respectable person. You've never been nothing but nice to me. But when you say that you are voting for whoever that person is, and then that person was just on TV being like, those trans people, they're the devil and they're trying to get your kids. And it's like, that's not my reality. And now they're making life dangerous for my trans brothers and sisters. And so I think that's where it's gotten so dangerous, where it's like, when can we go back to talking about those potholes that are outside? Why is traffic so bad? Why are rent prices so high? Let's talk about our taxes and let's get back to the issues that actually matter. Why is South Carolina so bad when it comes to education? Like, So I think that's why you have so many people.
The United States.
Right? Okay.
These kids in China. I don't know if you've seen videos of these kids in China. They're in kindergarten. I mean, yes, they're more dictatorship over there, but these kids know their stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And over here, it's unbelievable.
Well, that's because
we're light years behind.
We're focusing on other things, and we're not paying our teachers enough. We are not investing back into our kids because we're trying to do all these other things. And so I think
that's what really got me interested in Charlotte Angels is especially what I'm going through with my son. But these shitty ass parents that just leave these kids, and that's our future.
Yes.
Like that is the future of America, are these children, and they need a strong foundation and a backbone to flourish.
100%. That's why I find it so crazy when it's like, can we take the conversation back to that? And especially after the pandemic, when so many kids have just been lost, didn't show back up to school and never came back. And then we are expecting these teachers that only make, $30,000, $40,000 a year to
That's a thing too that gets me. It's
do everything.
You're paying. So my thing is that my mentor is very wealthy. He's very, very wealthy.
Can he be my mentor too?
The reason why I have him as my mentor is because he's very wealthy.
Right, of course.
So am I going to listen to him? 100%.
Right.
I remember when my teacher said, Chris, if you don't go to college, you're going to flip burgers at McDonald's. Well, probably little did she know, whoever owns that McDonald's franchise is making bank. So I would be happy to go flip burgers and work my way up to an owner. However, I'm being told that from someone who makes $50,000 a year. And it goes back to our limited mindset and surrounding ourselves with individuals that want to grow, want to have that grit. And so I think also the foundation with the teachers as well is, one, you're paying them very little. So that $20,000 job that you had, you worked your butt off, but you were like, this fucking sucks. So, and I'm sure all teachers do that because I remember them complaining when I was in school.
Right.
You're paying them very little. They have very little to no motivation unless they're just passionate about teaching a child and watching them succeed.
Right.
And I think that's really wrong, and we need to fix that substantially.
Absolutely. And I think too, because I dated a teacher some years ago, and you can see the light go off because of all the battles that they have to fight. When the person I dated that was a teacher, for Valentine's Day one year, I was like, well, what do you want? What would you like? I'll get you 2 gifts, one a surprise and something that you want, because they were a teacher and didn't have any money. And they were like, can you buy me a case of paper for my class? I was like, I'll just buy that on my own. They were like, no.
So that's what irritates me.
Right.
Okay. This is what irritates me is that these teachers are asking for school supplies. Every single, when my son starts kindergarten, I know I'm going to get a list of school supplies I got to put in his bag. Yet, go look at the tax bill you paid taxes on. What is the number one top line item? Taxes for schools.
Okay.
Go look at it.
Okay.
Go look at it. The number one line item, the most taxes you paid last year was taxes for schools.
Okay.
So if we're all paying the number one line item, the highest out of our paychecks, taxes for schools, yet you're forcing a 40,000-year-old job to pay for the school supplies for the children?
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Where's the money going?
Correct.
Right. And that's the question that we all are asking ourselves is, where is the money going? Why are school systems doing so bad?
It has to be something in the greedy politicians. I thought about running for mayor of Charlotte. I actually consulted some people. They said just because I title myself as a Republican, I would lose. So I said maybe I'll run as a Dem and then change over to Republican.
Don't be a Trisham Cotham. Don't make me make T-shirts that say "Don't be a Trisham Cotham girl."
But it's the question is where's the money going?
Right.
And I want you to text me after you look at your tax bill or your taxes that you paid. The number one thing is, and especially when you pay your car taxes in South Carolina, the highest thing is that you're paying it to schools.
So my question is, why is that a universal problem for no matter what the city? If it's a red, blue, that's my question is why? Because I don't know the answer to this. Is why is it that way that we're not investing in our schools? And I don't know what the answer is, but we have to figure it out.
Well, I think politicians are politicians. They're not business people.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I love this guy, David Tepper. He knows business. That dude knows business. I've heard, I've seen some things. He knows business. And when you're building a whole new Panther Stadium, don't get me wrong, I think it needs to be done. But what is it, like 150, 100 million of taxpayer dollars is going to that? Or I think they proposed, a $40 million tennis stadium because they were trying to bring professional tennis to Charlotte. Why don't you cut a little bit of that and send it back? To the teachers. Why? How many people watch tennis?
Right.
Compared to how many children are in the schools that need good teachers?
And how often are we going to be hosting tennis events, big enough tennis events that will justify the cost of something like that?
How long? What's my ROI going to be?
Right.
That's the thing. Is what's my ROI going to be? What about having the best schools in this Charlotte and Charlotte's MSA? How many people would start moving here from up north?
100%.
Saying, hey, we got the best schools in the whole state of North Carolina right here in Charlotte.
Well, that's why I feel like having that bureaucracy when it comes to the government of people who understand those issues that are nonpartisan, but the people that are just there to understand what that truly means. Like, don't quote me on this, but I remember listening to a podcast one time where they were talking about are the way that we've been funding stadiums truly getting the ROI for cities? And they were like, no, because they promise all these jobs and people are coming, but it's like, well, how often are events actually being held at these events?
They're not coming. They're busing them in because they're getting cheaper labor.
Right.
Yeah.
But then, like, how is that giving back? How is that providing jobs? Like, okay, so right now we have
the big thing is too is I don't know how I'd have to see how it's structured. Are the taxpayer dollars going to to renovate the stadium? Are we getting a part of the ticket sales? Are we getting part of their revenue? Probably not, because it's a privately held company. David Tepper's not going to show his revenue. And he's a smart businessman. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't either. So it's like, how are you getting that ROI? How can you justify on paper that there's an ROI coming back? Yes, I understand the city of Charlotte needs a soccer team. We need outdoor stuff. We need excitement, fun, stuff like that.
That brings the eye onto the city and provides a coolness factor that you can't calculate.
They wanted to buy in NODA, not Amtrak, but another big rail line was going to sell them an abandoned railroad for $90 million.
Oh.
What the hell do we need that for? We already got a light rail that goes up to NODA. Why do we need an abandoned rail line? We don't.
What were they going to use it for?
I don't know what they were going to use it for. I'll try to find it.
I'm about to say, like, if they have a plan, like, I'm all about. That's one of the things I love about Charlotte.
But that's just purchasing the rail line.
Oh, not even.
Now you got to purchase the train. Now, so all that adds up. Like, for example, let's talk about the right in front of the Ritz-Carlton, which they ruined that whole road of that tram. With all respect, the homeless people ride that. No one rides that little tram unless you're drunk. And you want to go for a ride.
Okay.
I don't want to see you on it.
Okay, I don't know.
But things like that, I think better use of our capital can be better spent.
Well, then also, like, instead of doing that, because I don't know like how that I haven't been there before, but like, okay, you say the homeless that are there, like, instead of just taking them and putting them in different parts of the city, like, what are we doing to address the root cause for these people?
Someone said that to me, and they said, Chris, if you're mayor, how are you going to change it? And I'm like, that's a great question, because I don't think any cities actually try to fix homelessness.
Right.
There, you can't just give them a building and say, hey, go live in the building for free.
Right.
No, you got to work.
It takes resources
It
for
does.
people.
And I know the shelter right there near the stadium. They do phenomenal work for homeless people, but they have a capacity. So it's like it comes to a point where, yes, you should help. However, you can only lead the horse to the water. You can't force it to drink. So if they just physically don't want help, it's like, what can you do? You don't want to lock them up. You don't want,
But see, that's where you have to get to the root cause. Like, yes, okay, we can get them a job. We can get them in the shower.
But say they're a drug
what's the
addict.
issue?
But if they don't want to get off drugs,
okay,
you can't force them.
You can't, but are we giving them the resources to at least try? And I'm gonna say I don't know.
Oh no,
But if
I
people-
think there's free resources out there. I mean, if you go to the west side of Charlotte, they have a little stand outside of Walmart. They give free government phones.
That's not gonna help nobody.
They look. Hey, I'm just saying, if you're homeless,
Right.
go get a free government phone.
Right.
Make you a TikTok account and start making crazy TikToks.
Right. But also, there's probably some mental illness there
Correct.
that we need to deal with, because so often a lot of these people. I mean, because I drive through
that's a whole nother
uptown.
story, because you and I both know the healthcare system.
Right, absolutely, and that's what
all-
it all goes back. It all goes back to that.
It's
It's a cyclical thing where it's like, who's going to be the person that has the resources to be able to say, "Let me get to the root issue"? Because if not, we're just going to keep having these conversations, just moving homeless people from place to place to place, and being like, "Well, get a job, get a phone." But it's like, if you don't figure out why are they a drug addict, what happened, and addressing it person by person. Like I said, I drive past Bank of America Stadium every day because of where I live, and I live off of Statesville. So I see so many homeless
my God,
people that are just out of their mind, and I'm like, that's someone who's never gonna just get a job because they're not
They
living in
can't.
reality. So how do we deal with that? I don't know. I don't know the issue. I don't know the solution. But that's something that we have to start to explore.
Yeah.
Because as things get more expensive and people are just holding on, they're going to slip into that.
There's going to be a
The gap.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's not going to be a middle class.
No, there's not. We're just.
It's going to be like that movie Time. I think what is it? Is it Justin Timberlake? I don't know.
Yes.
The
Oh my
Time-
gosh.
where- that was a good movie. Where he had time on it.
Yes.
And you'd have to go through one zone to another. And if you don't have enough time, you're dead.
Right.
But that's how that movie was: rich, poor. Like there was no middle class.
Absolutely. And so that's why I hope, my hope is that we have politicians, as millennials start to come into power, whether you're conservative or Democrat, we start to look at the root issues of why these people are that way.
100%.
Because that's why, like, when I am out, like, every now and like, I don't ever just give money. I'll be like, hey, let me get you a meal. Let me get you a hot meal. Let me not just pour on or put a Band-Aid on the situation.
See, don't do anything in Ballantyne where I live.
Why?
Because kid you not, you can come with me so I can show you. I was sitting at a red light to turn, leaving Lifetime, and another guy came to the corner. The one dude in the middle the lights are long, by the way. The one dude in the middle walked over to him. They walked down past Bank of America, got in their car, and drove away.
Oh.
And I said, these dudes probably making bank because you got a Lifetime here. We're in a very wealthy zip code. I said, are you kidding me?
Wow. And there's that too.
And there is those people that
There's that
are
too.
basically con people. That's their job. It's the panhandle.
They are, yeah, absolutely.
I got the 5-minute, got to get kicked out of here. However, I do want to say, in our lifetime, I strongly believe there will be a president of the United States that is an influencer.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because that is where marketing is going.
Yeah.
You know, I believe Trump won because he was on these podcasts.
Right.
Once he got on all these podcasts, Kamala started hopping on all these podcasts as well. And I think it opened up the broader. But if you look, both parties will automatically go to NFL players. They go to people who have a brand and people who follow them.
Influence.
Correct. Look at Mark Cuban. He's always saying, I'm not running, things like that. Shark Tank. He has a huge influence. So I feel in our lifetime, it may not be in the next decade or 2 decades, but in our lifetime, I think there will be someone who has a strong influence under these millennials, like Mr. Beast. Over, 300 million followers on Instagram? That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And as the older generation is dying off, this new younger generation has been with them for years and years. They've, just like your listeners have followed you from Tampa, from Savannah, all the way up to Charlotte. They know who you are as a person.
Right.
And if Miguel starts to run for mayor, they're going to say, I'm in Charlotte. I'm voting for him because I know his whole life.
Right.
And so I think in our lifetime there will be someone who's a influencer that will win presidency.
Also, I think there'll be an OnlyFans governor or mayor as well, because listen, as a millennial who's 39, I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you'll find something from back in my 20s that's on there. And that's going to happen to so many of us. That's going to be a hurdle that we're going to have to get across as well.
Look, hey.
And I'm joking, but like in all
you're
seriousness,
gonna have to get look at Trump. He has 48 felonies?
Right.
So, I mean, there's going to be a next person that has an OnlyFans
Right.
that is going to do it, and they're going to say, hey, I have one.
I'm about to say, if he had them felonies and I just had my ding dong on the computer screen, why can't I run for president? I got some ideas.
There you go. Voice them. Miguel, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you
Looking
so
forward to
much.
having you on in the future. And hey, if you guys have not followed Miguel, go ahead and follow him on Instagram and make sure you check it out because him and Holly, you guys are funny.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chris Salerno Show. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insight to help you along your journey. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have any questions or topics that you would like to cover, feel free to reach out directly to me. Shoot me a message on Instagram at Chris_Salerno_. Until next time, keep pushing forward and stay inspired.